Hello and welcome to a special Saturday edition of the Haskin Cast podcast. I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about one of my holiday projects that I'm very, very proud of. I don't really talk a lot about myself on the show, except for what comes out sort of in natural conversation flow. But I thought from time to time it might be nice to do that, especially with a project this specific, since it is the holiday season. Of course, if you're listening to this in July, then it is not the holiday season, but it still could be interesting just the same. So this podcast is going to be about my third Mental Sauna album, Mental Sauna 3 Christmas Inflections. I'll tell you how it started. I won, I think it was 25,000 or so entries, just a random drawing from Disc Makers, who is a wonderful CD pressing company. And they had a prize package that they partnered with Ibanez and Tama Drums, and I won a 7-string guitar and a 4-string bass and a 5-piece standard Tama entry line drum set. And it was a huge thing. I mean, when I got the email, the first thing that it said was, "This is not a joke," to which I immediately thought it was a joke. But I contacted them back and forth, verified, yes, it was indeed. I did win, and I was very excited about that. So the other part of the prize package was that I got a deal with CDBaby to do pro distribution and also a 500 disc pressing. And, I don't really press a lot of CDs because I don't play out. And without playing out, you really have less avenues. I think people that buy on the internet are more likely to download. So I don't really press a whole lot of CDs. If I do small runs because mostly it's digital downloading. I'm more likely to do like a download card that I can give to somebody or send to somebody. So it was kind of exciting. And Kelly, my graphic artist, Kelly Kenkart, did an absolutely stunning album cover for this. It's one of my favorites, and it was something that she got very quickly, the basic idea, and we went over a couple different things, but she nailed it almost right off the bat, as she always does. So I was very excited to win the package, and I thought, okay, well, when I first won, I thought, well, what am I going to do for an album? And I remember I was talking to Dean Ogden about it, and he said I should do a Christmas album. And I had never done one. I mean, I have a Christmas song that I wrote years ago that still isn't quite ready for release because I'm doing some updates and changes, and I can't sing very well anymore. So I need to find a good singer for it, or really find a way to get my voice up to par to do the song, because it's a little above my range these days. But he suggested a Christmas album, and I thought, well, yeah, that might be fun. So I grabbed a list of all the current public domain Christmas songs and just kind of went through them and picked out, I think, I really like this one. I think this would be nice in a Mental Sauna fashion. And once I had decided on the Mental Sauna theme as the driving force of what I was going to do, then everything started to take shape, and I contacted Kelly, and she got started on the artwork, and I got started on the music. I wanted to do something that had a really warm feeling to it for the holidays. And, when you're working with a lot of digital sounds, it gets really cold. It can sound very dry and digital. So I really worked extra hard on warming this sound up to make it just kind of that nice, you're sitting at the Christmas table and everything's lit by candles and Christmas lights, and, there's really nothing bright. It's just warm and cozy. And so that's the sound that I had worked towards to get the album done. And I want to say I started production in June or July of 2015. So it was shortly after I moved here to Vegas that I had won the contest, and just started knocking one song after another off of the list, and really didn't move on to the next song until I thought the first one, or the one I was working on, was right and had that right feel. There were very few changes that I made after I had moved on from a song. Interestingly, though, as the challenges with Mental Sauna music, or really when you're doing anything that's designed for relaxation, is that if you're doing it right, if the music is giving you that ability to sort of nod off or fall into like a deep trance state for meditation or something like that, it becomes very difficult to write. because as you listen back to a passage to make sure that you played it in a way that you're happy with, or that the sound's coming together, it starts to really make you tired, or put you in a sort of zone where you're really not hearing things, and you might have to go back and listen to it 2 or 3 times. I remember when I was writing Silent Night, I went back and added a part, and I think I had to listen to it, I want to say 6 times, because I kept just either zoning out or falling asleep listening to it. So I thought, well, that's great. The music is doing its job, but it's the biggest challenge of writing this stuff. And then, of course, once you're done writing it, then you have to mix it. And after you're done mixing it, then you have to master it. So you really get to spend a lot of times with these songs, a lot of time with the songs, which is great. But when it's something that is really designed to relax you, it's very, very hard to focus, and especially through all those different phases of the music. Usually what happens is my sleep schedule gets completely messed up for about 2 months before I start to feel a little bit normal again, because you just take these impromptu involuntary naps, which like I said, it justifies that the music is doing what you want it to do, but at the same time it's presenting a big challenge to completing it. So got the album finished and started mixing it, I want to say sometime in mid to late August, and spent about a month mixing it, and sent it to Randy, who was one of my first guests on the podcast, and he's got the ears that I trust to tell me honestly but gently if something is really off or needs work. And he sent back his notes. It was a couple of days later, and I remember kind of sitting on pins and needles through that time going, oh God, how bad is it? What is it he's not wanting to tell me? But he was just giving it a very, very thorough listen, which I greatly appreciated. And when he came back to me, he said it was probably the best sounding album I had come up with up to that point. So I was really excited, kind of firing on all cylinders, it felt, and started forward towards the release, and put the package together, coupled it with the artwork, and then did all the promotion and everything. And I think it came out sometime mid-October is when I released it. And, then it got on Amazon and iTunes and all that stuff. And I've gotten some really nice feedback on it. People seem to really enjoy it, which obviously that's the biggest thing for me, is that the things that I create are enjoyed by people, that it touches them in one way or another. And I hope it's one of those albums that they just kind of want to bring out every year and put on while they're decorating, or while they're having Christmas dinner or Christmas Eve dinner, whatever the case, and just kind of fill their room with that sort of, warm holiday embrace, which is really what I was going for. So I'm really pleased with this album. It's one of my favorites. It's one that really kind of sticks with me. I don't listen to my music a whole lot after it's done. Maybe once or twice a year, or every year or two, I'll pull out an album I've done and listen to it. But this is one that I've actually listened to quite a bit over the course of time. And it's one I can listen to and enjoy without picking apart every little bit and think, oh, you could have done this better, or you should have done that, or, oh, a harmony here would have been nice. So, it's definitely one that really, really has stayed with me all this time. And so I thought it would be nice to do a little bit of a talk on each song, and what challenges there were, and what I liked or why I chose it. So I'm going to go through each song individually, but I definitely wanted to give a big shout out to Kelly for the beautiful album cover. Shout out to Dean for being the sort of voice of reason of what kind of album I should release with this package. And also to Eva Bukovinsky, who played the duduk on Silent Night, which I'll get to when I get to that song, and to Randy for his set of ears, and letting me know and reassuring me that I had done a decent job with the production side of it, from a composition side, from a production side, everything. I don't think that there's anything I would change going back and doing this again. I'm very, very happy with everything, which is very rare for me. So it was a great album to do, and I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope that it's something people will enjoy. And as I speak about each song, I'm going to play it in the background during that talk, so you can kind of get the feel for what I'm talking about and hear it a little bit. So the album is available, of course, all over the place. You can stream it on Spotify. You can get it on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, tons of other various places, CDBaby itself. And then all the links are also on my website at www.scotthaskin.com. And let's get into the first song. So I'm sitting here. It's a freezing cold night here in Las Vegas, and for my friends on the East Coast or in Canada or some other places around the world, they would be laughing at how cold I am. Who would probably be here running around in t-shirt and shorts, having a good time. But when you're acclimated to 118 degrees, 80 degrees starts feeling pretty cool. And I think about like growing up in Michigan and what the winters were like and seeing the snow pile up. And it just isn't the same living in this part of the country. The Christmas feels a little bit different. And when I started working on this album, it was, I think, 115 degrees the day I started working on the first song. So to kind of get in the Christmas spirit, I got on Netflix. I pulled every Christmas movie that they had and just started watching them to kind of get in that spirit a little bit as much as possible. And I darkened the windows and I put on the Christmas lights and a scented candle and just really tried to create that mood so that I could write it properly. And it's similar to what I do with the Haunted Holidays albums, except I'm not playing nice little Hallmark type Christmas movies. I'm, playing horrible, murderous things. So the first song that I have on the album is Deck the Halls. And, all these are songs that were favorites throughout the years and songs that, when I was a kid, we would sing Christmas carols before we opened up our presents on Christmas Eve at my grandparents' house. And then Christmas Day, we would spend our morning at my house opening presents, and then we would go to my dad's parents' house and spend Christmas afternoon and into the evening with them. And the thing is, like now, because I'm older and I have a lot of memories, but the years just kind of blend one into another. I remember a lot of things, but I don't remember what came from what year. And I don't know if you guys feel the same thing, but it for me, it's kind of weird because I remember certain presents or I remember certain dinners or events that happened or songs that we listened to or songs we sang carols to where we were sitting, things like that. But I don't know necessarily which events happened the same year or same day as other events. So it just gets to be a bit of a blur. But Deck the Halls is one that I remember we did sing before we would open the presents. So we would have dinner and then we would kind of rest for a while and then we would go upstairs and we would sing carols and then we would come down and open presents and then we would go out in the freezing cold and just hope that we made it home without sliding anywhere because the roads would be pretty packed with snow late Christmas Eve. So Deck the Halls was just one of those songs that really brings back a lot of those childhood memories. And I think that the trouble I had with this one was that I have a very specific formula now for Mental Sauna music, and anything that has a hard striking sound like a piano or percussion or anything like that, I tend to sort of smooth out that strike so that you hear the sound, but you don't have that strike as much, so that when you hear it, it doesn't take you out of the song. If you're relaxing, if you're being lulled into sleep, you can still feel and hear the sound of that instrument without having it be a hard hit that kind of wakes you up or takes you out of that zone. And I remember with Deck the Halls, for some reason, there was something about that song where it was really difficult for me to find that smoothing point, and I had to go a little further than I had on some of the other songs to really give it that feel without that hard hit. And I never figured out why it was so different for that song, because it's not a heavy riff. It's not anything that, you're striking any harder than anything else. But for some reason, there was just something about the way the sound came through. So that was the big challenge. And of course, with each of these songs, they're not to the traditional arrangement. They have the parts or some of the parts, but being Mental Sauna, I had to kind of adapt everything to fit the Mental Sauna feel and the length of the song, the arrangement of the song, everything, so that it kind of worked for that meditative state or to lull you into sleep without. You want it to have the feel and you want it to be recognizable, but you don't want it to be too interesting so that it draws too much of your attention and keeps your focus on that. You want it to just be something that kind of floats around you and makes you kind of float with it. So fortunately, I was able to get Deck the Halls to that point and was able to keep it included on the album. The second song on the album, Away in a Manger, is a song that I've always found to be a bit of a challenge because I used to have a bit of a higher register in singing. And but for some reason, it was one of those songs that I could never really find that right pitch. I would float around it really close, but I could never exactly find it in the range that I used to sing in. So I always found the song a bit difficult, and I was very happy to include it on the album because since it is an instrumental, I didn't have to focus on vocals and worry about how I sounded or anything. And it was one that actually flowed quite nicely, and I added the saxophone to it because I thought that carried the verse a little bit more. And it's another one of those classic songs that just feels like Christmas as soon as you hear it. It's one that just immediately brings back memories, sitting around the tree, opening presents, and putting on the robe and opening up the Christmas stocking before my parents got up, before we went in to open the presents under the tree. So my brother or I would get up first, and we would wake the other one, and then we would wake our parents, but they wouldn't really get up yet. They needed to kind of wake up and warm up to the day, where, of course, as kids, we didn't care about sleep. It was the least important thing in the world. So my brother Lee and I would open our Christmas stockings, and while they were getting up, and then they would get up and we would go into the living room where the tree was and open our presents then. Just for some reason, it's one of those songs that just brings back the memory of Christmas morning, even though I don't really recall whether we listened to music in the morning or not. I'm sure we did. I'm sure we had something on, like a Christmas radio station or something, but I don't really recall that. That just brings back those memories. So it was great to be able to add it and not have to worry about how I sang it. The third song on the album, Jingle Bells, was a song that I actually didn't really care for that much. It seemed to be a bit of a silly song to me growing up, and very repetitive. And once you get it, you get it, and it's kind of like, okay, can we finish singing this one and move on to another? Nothing against the song; it's a perfectly fine song. It's got a nice little riff to it, but it was one as a child I didn't really care for. And when I saw it on the list of public domain songs, I chose it because I thought, maybe if I play with it a little bit and look at the song through a different set of eyes or set of ears, I guess, I might find something in it that I didn't see before. So being that, again, I didn't want to do anything that was too up-tempo, anything that was going to draw you away from that lulled state, I slowed it down a little bit and, just kind of mellowed it out. And I actually really like this version. It helped me to find a new way to see the song in a way that I liked, because it wasn't just that that crazy sleigh ride that the kids are on in the song. And it was nice to be able to include it, and I have a much greater appreciation now for doing that. And that brings us to the fourth song on the album, "O Come All Ye Faithful." This song, this is one for some reason that reminds me of church. And I don't know whether I've ever sang it in church or not. I haven't been to church in many, many years, but when I was a kid, we used to go quite regularly. And I'm not sure if I actually did sing it there or not, but for some reason it does remind me of church, and it has that, wonderful angelic sound to it. And this was a lot of fun to work on, just really getting the right feel for it, because it's such a beautiful and I hate to use the word epic because that sounds like it's huge, like a film score. It's really not. Angelic, I guess, would really be the best way to describe it. And it was really nice. It worked beautifully for Mental Sauna. Just had that sort of just smooth sound to it. And this was probably one of the easiest ones for me to do. And it was great to be able to put it on the album. The next song that we get to is Joy to the World, and this was a bit of a challenge because I had a hard time finding the right tempo to it. It's always been slightly upbeat, and I didn't want to stray too far from that, but at the same point, that was just a little too fast for what I do traditionally in Mental Sauna style. So I did end up slowing it down a bit more than I had originally intended, because anything above that just felt a little bit too fast. But it's a beautiful song. It's very simple. It just moves along forward. It's got a really, heartwarming feel to it, and another great addition for the album. Song 6 brings us to O Little Town of Bethlehem. And this is interesting because it really has a lot of parts to it. And the transitions were something that I really worked hard on here, because it can get really jumpy from one part to another. But the parts themselves, while they're fairly intricate, are also very simple. And from going from one part to another in this particular arrangement, I thought worked the best for Mental Sauna. It is a little bit repetitive, but again, it's one that, you wouldn't really be just focusing on. It would be something that would just kind of play in the background, or play while you're drifting away, or letting your mind relax, or having dinner, and you don't really notice the intricacy of it. But it's probably the one of the more intricate songs on the album. But it was one that I really had a nice time with. In fact, probably one of my favorites to work on. While I honestly love each and every song on the album, otherwise I wouldn't have put it on the album, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring is one of my two favorites. This song was a real challenge to play because it's very awkward to play on a keyboard. The first version that I heard of it was that I remember hearing was by Christopher Parkening, played on an acoustic guitar. And then there was a version of it for, I think it was on the Island. I can't remember if it was on the original soundtrack or the extended one now, but there's a really nice version of it there with a choral section. But I found it really challenging to play. And this probably took me longer than any other song to do because of that. But it was a lot of fun, and it's such a beautiful piece. Once I kind of got it down and I was able to play it on keyboard, I just wanted to sit there and play it over and over and over for hours. But you can't make an album of that, so when it came to the recording of it and the arrangement of it, I actually really minimized what I wanted to do with it, because it would have been too easy to make it too gaudy for the album and too long. So I really think restrained myself on this one, but I'm very happy with the final song. And even weeks after I was done with the album, I would find that I would play it on piano quite often, because it was just a fun piece to play once you get it. So I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. This one's while they're all close to my heart, this one's a little bit more towards the center. Now, hitting the midpoint of the album with "Oh Holy Night," I have to say that the challenge on this one was that I used to be a huge fan of South Park. I don't really watch much television or much of anything anymore, but I used to be a huge fan of South Park, and they did a Christmas album, and I think it was in the Christmas special too, where Cartman sang this song. And of course, being Cartman, there's a lot of humor and sarcasm and stuff in it, and a lot of off notes and things. But you kind of can't get that out of your head. And I almost wasn't able to include this song on the album because of that. I was just constantly, hearing Cartman singing it in my head, and it was throwing me off of the playing, and I couldn't find an arrangement that I was happy with. And it was probably one of the more challenging songs on the album, but in the end, I'm very, very happy with it. I think the transitions are nice. I think that the parts are, just where they need to be. They just set in that perfect seat where they're not too boring, not too bright or expressive, and definitely another one that I was just very, very happy to be able to complete and add to the album. Song 9, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, I actually almost didn't include on the album. This was a really difficult song to warm up and get that same feeling that I had with the other songs. The sounds I think that I had originally chosen seemed a little bit darker and edgier than I wanted, so I had to work a little bit harder to find some better sounds than the ones that I thought would work. And then to warm it up, I actually did a little bit more with this song than some of the other ones to just warm up the sound, and working with some tape simulators and tube compressors and things like that to really kind of find that candle glow feeling. I think that's the term I really mean, is it to feel like the song has the warmth of a candle glow. And I was really grateful, because this was kind of a last minute, let me give it one more shot kind of thing, because I really wanted it on the album. And I thought it sat really well between Oh Holy Night and The First Noel. And I really didn't want to lose it from that positioning. But, if it was too dark for the album, if it didn't carry that same warmth and feel as the rest of the songs, then it just wasn't going to work. So I'm really glad that I didn't give up on it. I'm really glad that I gave it one more shot and was able to find something that really worked and include it. So that brings us to The First Noel, and this is another one that the tempo was a real challenge, because you don't want to go too slow and have it too long and dragged out, but it can be a very poppy song. It can be something that's very up tempo and very quick runs on the keyboard to follow the vocal line. So I picked a sort of just below mid-range tempo, and I think it's right about where it needs to be. I don't really think I would change it. I tried even one or two beats per second up and down, and neither one of them just sounded right. So I ended up with the song as it is, and it does have an intricate part to it. There's a lot of playing going on. But at those tempos, it becomes non-distracting and really just kind of flows a little bit more than anything else. And again, this is one that I had to really roll off some of the attack and kind of give it a little bit more warmth. So another challenging song, but once again, another one that I'm very happy with. It's a beautiful song, and I was very grateful that I didn't have to cut it. Song 11, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, is another one that almost got ruined by South Park. There's a version that Chef sings, which of course turns into a song about making love. But this one, it was another one that I really had a hard time getting that out of my head. And I was able, I don't know exactly how I got past it, but I just, stuck with it. My butt was in the chair, my hands were on the keys, and just kept playing and working through it. I believe this is the one that took me the longest, or the second longest, I think, to complete, because again, the mental distraction of hearing another version of it made it really difficult to keep perspective on the version that I was trying to create. And but I feel I was able to overcome it, and another song that made it into the lineup and really helps move the album along, I think. And I think that the album would have been somewhat empty had I not been able to include it. It Came Upon a Midnight Clear is another one of my favorites, and this was probably the easiest to convert for Mental Sauna. This one, it really just lends itself to a sort of long, gentle passage with simple transitions, and it just has such a beautiful lyric to it, and a beautiful flow on the piano, and it's one that I definitely treasure. This is another one that kind of reminds me of Christmas Eve for some reason. There was one particular year where we were waiting for my dad to get home from work, and then we were all ready, and I used to sit on the floor in my bedroom, and I had red Christmas lights. I remember that. And this one particular year, when I was doing martial arts, I just spent the whole night stretching. I was playing Deep Purple records. I remember I was playing the third Deep Purple album, which was self-titled, and songs like Bird Has Flown, and Why Didn't Rosemary, and Chasing Shadows. And this is one of those memories that's very, very vivid. And I want to say that I was probably 14 years old, and just waiting to go to my grandparents' house for Christmas Eve. And of course, my dad worked retail, so it was always, he had to close the store, and waiting for him to get home so that we could go over for Christmas dinner. And of course, we're excited about, what's it going to be like. And my grandma always put on this wonderful dinner spread, and then, let's get through the carols so we can get to presents. And So I remember sitting there in my martial arts uniform, and I just sat there for hours stretching and trying to get to the point where I could actually bend and touch my knees with my forehead, because by that point, my muscles were a little tighter, and I couldn't do that so easily. I did eventually make it, though, so I was very happy about that. But this one particular year, my dad got home, and then he had parked on the the bit of the street between the sidewalk and the street. In Michigan, we had our yard and then the sidewalk and then another bit of state-owned property and then the street. And I think he had parked there because we were going to take the other car to my grandparents, and that car ended up getting stuck in the snow. So he had to put some cardboard or wood or something under the tires. But I remember just sitting in the back seat and being worried that we weren't able to actually get anywhere because the other car got stuck in the snow and the embankment. And but eventually he got us out, and we were able to get there. And yeah, that was definitely one of those interesting ones. But that's kind of the feel that I wanted to capture, was sitting in my room with the red Christmas lights and just that warmth and just pleasant music that made me feel good, and doing something that made me feel good, and just waiting for a wonderful night to unfold. So hopefully that's the feel that I've given all of you with this album. And yeah, this was definitely a beautiful song that held some really good memories for it. Now, I can't say why I associate this song with that night, because I honestly have no clue. But for some reason I do, and it's something that I still remember after all these years, and grateful to share it with you. We Three Kings is another one of those just beautiful, beautiful songs. And for some reason, when I hear the song in my head, I hear it with the nice lyrics, but I also hear like a third voice in it, which is very deep, almost like Caiaphas from the Jesus Christ Superstar movie soundtrack. Something like really, really deep in baritone that kind of supports the other harmonic lead vocals. And I don't know if I'd heard a version that was like that, or if it's just something that I hear in my head. But this was another really easy song to do, one of the easier ones to convert to the Mental Sauna feel. Very simple, very gentle, moves forward very nicely. The challenge, as I recall on this one, was just stretching it out to making it lengthy enough to really put on, put in the album, because the original version, I was like at a minute or a minute 5, I think, and I was like, what else do I do with this? But, I worked on it a little bit longer, and the arrangement was nice. But that was probably the only challenge I had with this one. Other than that, it was fairly easy to do. This is another one that I just really find a nice warmth in, and really happy with. The last song to make it to the album, Silent Night, this one was a lot of fun. It's always been one of my favorites. I for 1 year for Christmas, I got a zither. And Silent Night was, I think, the first song that, because you had these pieces of sheet music that would just slide under it, and it would walk you right through the song. Even if you didn't read music, it put the note under the right string, and it was all very linear, so you could just go through and play it, and you just had to feel your own tempo. And so Silent Night has always been one of the more prominent Christmas songs for me. And I was talking to my friend Eva, who's a film composer, and now she's going to film school right now to direct. And she is a fantastic duduk player. And that's this just beautiful little wind instrument that just has a very ethnic sound to it. And we had talked about her playing on the song, and so I kind of rearranged it to give passages to open it up a little bit for her to play around. And I didn't write her parts at all. I wrote something, and I sent it to her, and I'm like, I'm sure you can come up with something better. So I sent her a clean version and just gave her the space to play. And she was brilliant. She played just beautifully, and she sent me, I think, 2 or 3 different choices for each part of styles that she came up with. And so I picked and chose, and I think just about everything I picked was the second version. which is very common because the first version you're like just kind of getting the feel for it, and then by the second version you're able to relax and just feel it a little bit more in play. And loved what she did. And so I kept all that on there and was really, really happy to partner with her. So along with Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, this is my other favorite song on the album. Part of it was just because it was such a great experience working with her, and part of it is because her playing is just tremendously beautiful, and part of it is just because I love the song. I'm really happy with the arrangements. I did a little bit of extra pads and synthesizer on this one to kind of thicken it up a bit. But this was a song I'm so proud of, and I've pitched for a couple of license deals, and it's one that I'm definitely like when people ask me what track to play, that's the first one I suggest. So thank you again, Eva, for playing so beautifully on it. It was brilliant work, and very, very happy with it. So before I wrap up, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. There was one more song I wanted to include on the album. It's, to me, the ultimate Christmas song. It's the one that when I used to go into Hallmark to buy my box of Christmas cards to send out, it's the song that I would always hear at Hallmark, and that meant that Christmas had begun. And that would be Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy from Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker. And it's interesting, and I feel so bad because Tchaikovsky hated this song. He hated the whole Nutcracker, really, but this song in particular he just thought was rubbish. And I wish he'd have seen the beauty of it, because it's one that really has stuck with me. It touches my heart, and probably like no other Christmas song does. And it's so ironic because it's the one that I couldn't include on the Christmas album, and here's why. When I was working on the song, I realized how dark the music actually is. I never really noticed it before. And no matter what I did with it, no matter what sounds I used, no matter how I played it, what tempo I played it at, it just sounded more like a horror song than anything else. And I thought, boy, this would be a great bit for like a horror soundtrack or a dark album, and was actually the sort of catalyst for me creating the Haunted Holidays series. And so I used the music that I had created for Mental Sauna 3 Christmas Inflections became the music I used on the first Haunted Holidays album, where I did the last dance of the sugared plum fairy. Just a little twist on the words there, and went into a whole different story with that. But I thought the music suited that much better because, boy, it just was dark. And I thought it's probably the one song that would really pull you away from that meditative or relaxed state. So it just didn't belong on the album. And so I couldn't include it as much as I wanted to. But I did find a sad irony to the fact that that's the song that has always defined Christmas for me. And the first Christmas album I come out with, I can't include it. So that was a bit hard. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was another idea I had for a song. I can't remember. I think it was the following year, or maybe it was last year, 2017, that it came out. I think it was 2017. I had written up a sort of acoustic guitar campfire version of We Three Kings. And, having had so much fun working on it on this album, to do this version of it, I thought, it would be really fun to just kind of do like everybody's sitting around the campfire kind of thing. And then, of course, that wasn't exactly the way it ended. I put a little bit of timpani in there. And if there's ever been a timpani at a campfire, I'd love to know how that happened. That's not just the kind of thing that you drag around with you everywhere you go, unless you're a timpanist, timpanist. I'm not sure what that would be, but a timpani player. And even they, I'm sure, get tired of carrying those things around. So I did a campfire version of that. My friend Bruce Vaught, who is a fantastic guitar player and songwriter himself, played the acoustic guitar on it. And then my friend Taryn Emmert added the vocals to it, did an absolutely beautiful job. She went into a studio and cut it in about an hour and sent me several different vocal choices. And so I had to pick and choose between those, but was very, very happy with her performances, really gave me exactly what I wanted. And she had the perfect voice for that sort of just gypsy campfire kind of feel that I was going for. And I had played drums on it and bass, actual bass guitar. So that's not samples. And then Bruce did the acoustic and she did the vocals. So it's just a very natural song, something that almost feels off the cuff, which is kind of the idea I wanted to have that campfire feel. So it's just, a bunch of friends getting together, playing a song. And you can almost feel the heat of the campfire while you're listening to it, which I just love.
We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse so far, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star.
So that was the other song that I had released, and the song that I wrote, A Christmas Wish, I will release one day. Again, if I can find a way to get my vocals up to snuff or find someone else to sing the song who will be more suited to it than I am at this point, we'll hopefully release that next year. We'll see. And it's 2018, by the way, that I'm releasing this, in case you're listening to this at some point down the road. So hopefully by Christmas of 2019, I'll have my act together on that song. And, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed hearing a little bit more about the album and hearing a little bit of the story and the story of each of the songs. I'm sure there's probably more memories associated with it I'm just not thinking of right now. But my cup of cocoa is empty, and I've been through all the songs, and it's time to call this one a night. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I wish you all a safe and wonderful holiday wherever you're at. It's a great time to spend with family or friends, or doing something that's just kind of special for you. And I'm not typically a nostalgic person, but for some reason this time of year I do tend to get a little bit nostalgic and think about the years gone by and smile at a lot of the memories that I've had, because Christmas was always a very special thing in my family. And even as we got older and kind of went our separate ways, there's plenty of years where I've spent Christmas alone home working in the studio, because it's a great day for me to work. Everybody's busy with their family dinners or friends or whatever. And a couple years I spent going to a party with some friends here in Vegas that have been kind enough to invite me. Last year I went down to Arizona and spent that with my brothers, and my dad came down. So it's not so much about what you do, it's that you enjoy whatever it is that you do, and that it's maybe is memorable, maybe it has a special significance, whatever you did that day. I'm planning on going to a party for a bit this year and then coming home and working in the studio on a project I've got planned. But you never know. I say that every year that I go. I'm just going to stop by, is what I say, and then I end up being the last one to leave. Except for the people that own the house. So we'll see what happens. But that is the plan for this year. So we'll see how that goes. But for you, whatever you're doing, send me a note. I'd love to hear about it. And hope that you all have a very Merry Christmas or Happy Holiday, or whatever way you want to say it. And let's just talk about that for a second. It's in this world of everybody just being so offended by everything now. I mean, if the pillow isn't perfect, that people complain about that, and then they got to be all over Facebook or all over Twitter talking about how horrible their night was because their pillow wasn't fluffed properly. Let's just get this out in the open. Just appreciate the fact that somebody's wishing you well. It doesn't matter if they're talking about Jesus. It doesn't matter if they're talking about Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas or whatever it is. Just enjoy the fact that somebody cared enough to wish you well, and let's enjoy it. So that being said, have a happy holiday, have a Merry Christmas, have a happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you're celebrating, whatever it is that you believe, whatever it is you feel, just take some time out and enjoy. Here in America, just about everything is closed on Christmas except for Vegas because we don't stop. A lot of the stores will be closed, but a lot, of course, the casinos and the bars and all that are going to be running 24/7. So wherever you are, stay safe. People get a little crazy on the road, but be safe, enjoy, and thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoy the album. Again, it's on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, CDBaby. You can get the links through my website or go to any of those sites directly. As always, and as a holiday gift to me, I would ask you, please give it a star rating. Leave feedback if you like. If you don't like it, that's fine. Give it an honest rating. I don't really like being pandered to. If it's not a 5-star album, don't put 5 stars. If it's 3 stars, put 3. If it's 1, put 1. But give it a rating. And that could be on iTunes, that could be on Amazon. Those are really the 2 biggest for ratings. So thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll be back Wednesday with our regularly scheduled episode of the Haskin Cast podcast.